So here's about how the heat exchanger is going to look once it gets mounted up. I get a little bit of irony. I keep using these oil drums, and I'm going to be making green energy with it. The cleanest green energy there is. So this is how it's going to sit. What I plan to do, I'm going to go ahead. I've already traced out, centered my drum up where I want it. I've got a 2-inch gap in between the barrel and the heat exchanger body. 2 inches from here to here, 2 1/4 on the sides. Centered it up, I traced it out. I'm gonna knock that hole out. Then I'm gonna knock out the bottom of this drum, and I'm gonna weld a flange onto it that will then bolt down onto the standoff to actually mount it up. That way, you know, these are really, really thin drums. If they ever burn up, rust out, any issue like that, it won't be a big deal. All I'll have to do is unbolt the flange, cut the flange off of this drum, put it onto the new one, bolt it down, I'm done. The only other modification it's going to get is somewhere up in here will be the gas output and the gas or air input, but those will just be 2 holes and a little spout, not a big deal. That way this is removable, it's easy to get to the air intake pipe. It's also going to be easy to put the L on that will come up into the bottom of the heat exchanger. And pretty much universally, everybody on a Wayne Keith is running a 2-foot long heat exchanger, the inside part that we'll be building in a little bit, once this housing's all mounted down. Everybody's running a 2-footer. Well, if I did my measurements right, I have room to put a 2-footer inside of this because my air intake pipe will be down in here, even though the drum is only, how tall was it? The drum's 26 inches tall. My heat exchanger is going to stop right about here. So I'll be able to fit the regular size in there, and I mean, Wayne's running that in his V10. The Wilbur Smith had the same size one in it. So it's got more than enough surface area for preheating the incoming air and cooling down the gases that are passing. So it makes it kind of handy that this drum will be just this flange in 2 holes, no other modifications. Traditional Wayne Keith build, if you were using these, you're going to be stacking 2 drums together because you need it to end down here. With my build, now I don't have to do that, and that makes making this piece a lot easier, and then minimize any welding that needs to be done on the barrel, and that obviously better chances of not having pinholes in your weld, since I just got through fixing the 3 leaks that are on my lower drum. So I'm going to go ahead and get this cut out, get the bottom of this drum blown out, and then I'm going to figure out how I'm going to make this bolt down flange so that this barrel mounts in place, but it's still nice and easy, quickly removable. Looks like I need just a touch of grinding because I want to get it to where this flange sits just down inside. That way when I put my bolt-on flange on, this shoulder right here will basically index the barrel to keep it in place. Perfect. Yeah, that pretty much locks the barrel in place, and that'll give me a point that I can basically build my flange to where this sits through the flange. I can bolt the flange down, set the drum in it, weld it in place, then I can unbolt it, and the drum is, and then the flange is already mounted to the drum, and we're ready to blow out the bottom of this drum. But just because I'm being paranoid, looks pretty darn good. It helps that the bottom of this drum has a shelf where it tapers in, so if my hole is at least somewhat round, it should self-center it in there. That's a pretty nice snug fit. So now we're ready to build the flange. I wasn't gonna make anybody suffer through watching me do math. I got a White River High School education. Anybody from Buckley, Washington knows you should be scared about that. Anyways, traced out the bottom of the drum. That's our inside diameter. I made it 1 3/4 inches wide. I figure that's going to be plenty of clamping area. The very edges in the corners will be really close to the edges of the box that it stands on and close to the drum over here. So there's going to be a welded surface here, 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 and here. This is bolting down tight to. So really I'm relying on the bolts in the field in the middle. That's going to be what's the real clamping and sealing area. I just roughly figured I probably need, in between each corner, I need 4 bolts. So I end up with a 20 bolt pattern. I'm going to be using 3/8 hardware. These 3/8 washers that I have, it leaves me 1 3/4 inches between the washers. I've already pilot drilled all of it out. Because this is 14 gauge, I know when I cut it, there's a good chance it's going to distort some. So I wanted to go ahead and get all of my holes drilled first, at least the pilot holes. Also, it's going to be easier to drill it right now anyways, because it's round. I can't really clamp it in the vise of the drill press very easily. But so we'll cut out the inside interior diameter first, because that's going to let all of this material out here hold on to the ring and keep it, you know, as flat as we can for cutting 14 gauge with a plasma cutter. And then I'll cut the outside, and we'll go ahead and get it set in place, make sure the drum fits through it, transfer this bolt pattern down onto the mount, get this actually bolted in place, then we'll set the drum in it and weld the flange onto the drum. Stupid DeWalt batteries.
just about the same fit. Got just a touch of grinding to do, and I'll get the drum to fit now, then I'll go ahead and cut out the outside. Perfect. Do a little cleanup, see how it fits. So there's just a rough look. I knew I had a flat side over here and I was going to utilize that against the drum because right here I have a weld that comes up. All of these other welds, they're pretty much flush. So I utilized that flat spot there to come up against the weld just in case I got too close. So makes a pretty good fit up right now, and all I did was knock the slag off of it. I'm going to go through, clean up all the edges, make it nice and pretty, get it clean, ready to weld. Then I'm going to go ahead and measure corner to corner, put my center mark back on the top plate on both sides, line up those two bolt holes, and then the entire bolt pattern will be phased, you know, in one direction. I won't just have random bolts. Oh, and if I didn't mention, you know, obviously circle 360 degrees, I divided it into 18 degree in between the bolts. That's how I came up with the pattern. And if I had been real smart, I should have made this before I welded the bottom onto this thing, because then I could have put all the bolts in it, thread the nuts up from underneath, and welded the nuts in place. Then I could have just taken them off from the outside just with an impact real quick, zip, 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 and they're all off. But because I didn't think of that, I didn't think that far ahead, when I put the ash clean out door right here, I'll be able to reach all the way in and get to all of these bolts if I ever need to remove this. I shouldn't have to remove it unless either I have a fire tube failure or maybe I don't know why else I would ever need to get in here. I'm just making it as serviceable as I can. So I'll have to go through the ash clean out door to be able to get to the bolts, but not a big deal. Alright, I'm going to do a whole bunch of cleanup on this thing and get it ready to put on. So there's the general gist of it. Now I got to get the bottom edge of this barrel cleaned up and get it set back in there and get it welded. And before I did that, I made sure still get an impact on all the bolts. So I spaced it so that my impact lays right up against this rib, basically all the way around. And this impact has a larger head on it than my Makita or some of the other cordless ones. So that'll work out well. If I ever need to pull it, I can use air tools, you can use electric tools. Of course, if I'm on the side of the road, I'm going to be doing it by hand, but you know, hopefully we don't have any breakdowns like that. That's why I'm engineering this system as best I can to be completely serviceable. And like I said, once that door is cut in down here, I'll be able to reach right in there and get to all of those bolts.